Well, to my mind, it's not necessarily that you become a writer, or maybe just in the technical side of it. I think if you feel that you are a writer, it will happen quite early on, and you will have a certain relationship towards words, and you will strive to explain what you're going through and what's happening to you with words in writing, usually, or maybe storytelling. And that's what it was like for me. I started writing when I was a child, and just kept on going. Now, if you think about the technical side of writing, that's something that I think you also don't necessarily become so much as you grow into or work into by writing, and by I think trying to, in a sense, conquer what it is that will make you be a better player with words, because that's what writing is. It's actually juggling words, I think. So, in answer to your question, it's a process, I think. That's a complex question, I think. Obviously, with the advent of the internet and the internet communication, I think a lot has changed. The authors have become much more in tune with what the audience demands from them, because the contact has become more personal in a way. In the past, the only way to approach an author would be by writing a letter to probably the publishing house. Nowadays, most writers are available on numerous social networks, and I think that the reader believes that they have a right to participate in the process of creation more than they used to before. In a way, by becoming a writer, a published writer, you become part of a community that is not a community of writers necessarily, but also a community of readers as well. And I think you submit yourself to this kind of relationship, which is very important because it does benefit you as a writer to take a listen to the other side, as they say. I love that question. I always remember one of my favorite authors, Iris Murdoch, and her speech about that very subject, which in essence states that philosophy as a science needs to offer clarification, and that literature as an art needs to offer mystification. And I do submit to that point of view because personally, for myself and my writing, I don't think that I'm looking for answers. I think that I'm trying to find the appropriate questions to ask. And I think that it's upon the readers to dig up the questions from my writing and maybe focus on trying to offer their own responses to my writing, which of course does make it a bit more demanding in a sense as a reading experience. But then again, I don't think that reading should be just for fun, or that it should be just entertainment, but it also shouldn't be just about enlightening. It should be about questions and about answers from time to time. Well, I think we can speak about that in two ways, or in two levels. One would be the shall we say, the conscious level, where my background or what's happened to me or my experiences will definitely influence my writing, in the sense that a writer writes about what they know, or what they want to know, or what they want to explain to themselves. On the other hand, I think that there's a lot that happens within you, consciously or subconsciously, that informs the way you create whatever it is, without necessarily you being aware of it. So that I was amazed, for example, when some of the people that I know well, or that know me well, read the Birdman Cycle. They could really pinpoint issues that were very close to myself, maybe even better than I could have done, which made me think about how much of myself I was revealing through the characters, through the style, through the way I structured the novel. And I think that definitely your background informs a large part of your work, if your work is honest. And I think that that's what we strive for as writers, to create something which will be an honest representation of our concerns. Every time I give an interview, I both love and dread that question, because there are so many writers that influence you, and so many writers whose style or concerns you admire. But again, on the other side, it's very difficult to name just a few, or to have a few that will be a constant in your reading life or in your writing life, because I think that's also a dynamic process of influence, or of liking someone in that sense, because you change as a person as well. When it comes to literature in general, I've already mentioned Iris Murdoch. I think that I'm in awe of her blend of realism and fantasy, if you could term it that. Not that she writes fantasy books, of course, but in how she creates characters which are at the same time bizarre, but at the same time so true to life, and so revealing of very profound human characteristics. I'm also a fan of A.S. Byatt, who is just embarrassingly perfect when it comes to style or the sound of the sentence. and also a very serious writer in the best connotation of that word. When it comes to crime fiction, which I'm a huge fan of, it's really a no-brainer. Ruth Rendell, Patricia Highsmith, who is, I think, one of the pioneers of a truly engaged psychological crime fiction. And I think one of the authors who have showed us that crime fiction can be so much more than about solving a crime. And I also have to mention an author that I feel is unjustly neglected. Although you will see her name mentioned in almost any anthology or list of authors that have left a strong mark upon literature, but you will rarely see her work in print, and that's Margaret Miller, a Canadian-born American author who wrote from the 1940s to the 1980s, and I think has left an astounding body of work. And there's also the Belgian-French author, Georges Simenon, who is incredibly prolific. He wrote, I think, over 400 novels, but at the same time offers such an astoundingly accurate portrait of human psychology. It's amazing. And of course there are many other authors, too numerous to mention, but let this be a good example of what I like. Well, I don't consider myself a psychologist, because I'm not. A behaviorist, if you mean it in the sense that I believe that a person's behavior is an indication of their psychological state, and that by exploring a person's behavior you can form a fuller picture of their personalities, then yes, I could be a behaviorist. If I would have to describe myself in a word that ends with an ist, I think I would be a mentalist. Not because I'm psychic, because mentalists aren't psychic, but because I think that mentalists, when you remove all the myths around them, are people who are adept at stripping away the layers of artifice that people build since childhood, and are somehow able to see more clearly than others what a human being is about. At times, I think even better than that human being, him or herself. This is, of course, a joke on my part, but I do believe that if you're interested in human behavior and how that behavior relates to human psychology, you do become more aware of the little telltale signs that people produce and that are very revealing. And I have been trying in my writing to explore these little elements. They're not necessarily clear. They're very frequently opaque or oblique, sometimes even obscure, all words beginning with op. But I think that there is a lot of truth in seemingly incomprehensible behavior. And that's what I tried to shed light on. Oh, I do, it's true. I know that you know that I follow the awards seasons for everything, for films, for music, for literature. It's true. Not because I think it's always the best indicator of what's best in that year in any category, but because I think that nominations, especially awards less, but nominations, I think have a way of bringing out to the surface certain authors or certain books that otherwise would remain rather obscure. And when I look at awards, that's what I'm usually searching for. This year, Edgar nominations are not so surprising on one hand. On the other, there are authors that I'm looking forward to reading, and some of them are acquaintances of mine, some of them are people that I've never met, but I will be rooting for some, maybe a little less for some others, but that's, I think, normal when it comes to awards. I don't know what you would like me to reveal. I could tell you that it's an intimate story of people caught up in lives that they have not necessarily wished to lead, and maybe weren't even aware that they were heading to. And the essence of the novel, I think, is how people find ways to deal with such situations where they are not really clear about how they're feeling, or how those feelings that they have influence people around them, and also how to come to terms with the understanding that your life has not taken on the shape that you might have wished. And I've used a metaphor to explore these concepts. Sometimes the metaphor was maybe too strong, so that some people believe that my novel is a horror story. I don't think it's a horror story, unless our everyday reality is horrifying, which it sometimes is, admittedly, but not always. And I would like the readers to take that from the book, that it's a way to leave them with a question about the meaning of their choices, and maybe to think about how best to avoid the traps that we all are prey to, which are the traps of disappointment in life. Maybe that could be something revealing about the novel.